There we go.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Dialogues About Death with Chris Miller. How you doing, Chris?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning. Well, today
Doing
is
amazing.
episode 8. I can't believe we're already at episode 8. It's been time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely.
And we always say that Thomas Miller Mortuary puts the fun in funerals. So
We try.
that's right. That's right. So
Absolutely. We try.
So today we're talking about funeral customs. And so I'm
Yes.
going to be asking you, Chris, some specifics about some, but you might be aware of some that I'm not aware of. So if
Sure.
anyone is watching this right now and you are interested or think maybe somebody in your community is interested, we'd love for you to share it amongst your community. Or if you have any questions, you won't be coming on screen. So it's safe to ask questions in the comments. So make sure you do that. And Chris loves
Yeah.
to answer questions on the fly, right, Chris?
Sure. Absolutely. I'm ready.
That's awesome. Well, I think I just want to commend you, Chris. The show has really, people have been reaching out privately saying, wow, I thought this would be really weird, but it's actually really like comforting to know like I can ask questions and get real answers and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just,
Yeah.
you know. So, what have you found? Have you heard any feedback about the show
Same,
so far?
same thing with I'm involved in the community. I'm out and about all the time, going to events, and I've had people come up to me and say, "Wow, they made them not logged in live, but they've logged in and seen my show afterwards." And they're like, "Wow, that's been really interesting." And they're like, "I didn't know about that." So I'm hopefully just giving everybody a little its and bits of information out there to hopefully put their mind at ease when it comes to funeral service and death. So I'm always, like I said, interested in questions. Put them in the chat, email me or text me directly, and then Mary and I will put them all together and we'll address them. If not currently, we will in the coming weeks.
I love it. Also, good morning, Sissy. Thanks for coming on live. We
Good
love when we
morning.
have people on live. That's awesome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so again, today we're talking about different customs, and these are
Yeah.
customs in um, religious customs,
Yes.
different cultures, and also different countries. So let's start out with let's talk about some religious customs, shall we?
Sure.
So, Chris, if you could share, I'm going to go off screen so you can answer this question. Share some
Sure.
various different religious customs that you regularly serve in our community, because I know there's a
Sure.
variety of them. So maybe start
Yeah.
off with the one that you do more often, and then
Sure.
let's go to some more, some others, if I
Absolutely.
could speak.
Sure. No problem. Yeah, we're I live here in Corona, California, which is in the Southern California area, and we're really fortunate that we're a real melting pot of culture and community here in our area, and especially over the last 5 or 10 years, we've had a diversity of religious customs and cultures move into our hometown, which we have had an honor and privilege of serving. Primarily through the years, Corona has been highly Hispanic community, and we've served a lot of Catholic families. And so we've always had the Catholic traditions of having like rosaries in the evening, having a viewing or visitation, and then we go to their church and have a mass the following day, followed by burial. But as times have changed, cremation has come about. So we're still doing those same types of services for our Hispanic families, where we'll still do a wake or an evening rosary or vigil service, followed by a mass the next day. But instead of going to the cemetery, we might go to the crematory and have a cremation, where then the family will then bury their ashes later on. So that's kind of one part that we've served for years. Another part of religious customs that we serve here in our area are the Mormon or LDS faith, and they have a lot of traditions in their religious customs too, where when their families come in, they take care of a dressing. They have a ceremonial dressings that they do for their loved ones prior to their ceremonies. And so the men will come in and do a dressing for the men, and the ladies will come in and do a dressing for the ladies in their temple garments. And then they would, at the time of the day of the service, we'll have a little viewing or visitation an hour prior to their ceremony, and that is called it's just a little viewing, and it's in their Relief Society room, which is a little side room off to their chapel. And so that's where the family and friends can gather and meet with the family, have some time for closure, and then we'll move their loved one into the chapel and then have a ceremony there. So those are two predominant types of religious customs and cultures that we serve here in the community. But what's been really unique lately over the last 5 years or so, since we put our own crematory in, we've been serving a lot of Buddhist and Hindu families. And they have a lot of cultural things that they believe in their religion for their loved one to move on to the next after death. And so when we do services for them, they have a lot of symbolic messages that they bring with foods and symbols that they bring in, and they'll set those types of services up in our chapel. And their services will run maybe a couple hours prior to the finality of it, where we then will take their loved one, and then we'll have a little procession across our parking lot to our crematory. Then they will have a cremation ceremony at our crematory to have the finality of that service for them. But prior to that, they have in their culture they give homage to food, clothing, money, and those types of things when it comes to the Buddhist and Hindu services. And it's very interesting, and it's been a learning experience for me and our staff too, as we get these new religious cultures and customs coming into our community, and we learn from them and they learn from us, and some of them also starting to, you can say, Americanize a little bit. So they still bring a lot of their traditions from their countries here to America, but then they're having to make modifications on how they do things here in America also. So they're starting to do a little hybrid of their own religious customs, and it's been really fascinating. And it's a great learning experience, and I find it quite fascinating, really.
That's awesome. It is very interesting. I've been to your chapel when after one of those ceremonies, and they have beautiful dragon fruit and so colorful, and the beautiful flowers, and it's just such an honor to see their, you helping them satisfy their customs
Yeah.
to for the religion, because it's I think that's very respectful of you and your team.
It is. There's some funeral homes that aren't set up for that kind of thing. We're fortunate that our chapel's large enough that we can serve a large group of people. Our staff is very accommodating to their needs, and we're very respectful of these religious customs because, you know, they brought them from their country, but here we're bringing them here. And those people should have that opportunity to celebrate their loved one in their culture that they have. And we're very respectful in opening up our funeral home to make it their home for the day while they're having their time of celebration and remembrance.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I
Yeah.
know that you also, as you mentioned, since you have the crematory on site, what is the we're going to move over to cultures, and I'll ask you this
Okay.
question and I'll go off again. But you mentioned to me once that there's some cultures that they have a very special ritual um, in regards to the crematorium, where they
Yeah.
gather inside. And so go through that a little bit more, and maybe the difference of different cultures of some people who don't want to be cremated, and if
Sure.
that has changed and things like that. So go ahead. We're talking about various cultures as well.
Sure. So when we're dealing with families that incorporate cremation into their funeral ceremony, what's been very fascinating is we start off at our funeral home where they have the predominant part of their funeral ceremony, and they have people speaking, and they might have their monks or religious leaders talking and having their prayers, and again they pay homage to those types of things, and then they get all of the family and the guests that are involved in the ceremony itself. So a lot of the times they will ask the people to come forward and put a flower in the casket, or put a piece of remembrance in the casket to that loved one is coming forward. So that everybody is standing up and getting around, and everybody is moving around in the chapel. Then they get seated. Then at the end of the ceremony, what they do is they will have everybody leave the chapel and they line up outside the building, and we'll have the immediate family as act as pallbearers, and then they'll take the casket and they'll roll it out outside of the funeral home, and then they have all the pallbearers and the immediate family hold on to the casket, and we roll it, and everybody follows in a walking ceremony over to the crematory. And it's quite beautiful, really. And sometimes they're throwing flower petals on the ground as we're walking to the crematory. And as we go in and we arrive into the crematory, We allow the immediate family to join in the room where the retort is, where the machine is, where the cremation takes place. And then typically it's always like the oldest family member, or maybe the patriarch, it could be the oldest son or the oldest daughter, is the one that what they do is they kind of ignite the ignition flame for the cremation. So once they have their final prayers there in the crematory, and they do a couple other little incense ceremonies and flower ceremonies, they will go ahead and we will insert the casket into the retort, into the crematory. And then once the chamber door is shut, that person that is the responsible family member, the elder of the group, we will allow them to push the button to start the ignition. And for them, it's very emotional, and sometimes there's two or three people coming together to push the button, and everybody, all the families there is watching. And what we've done at our crematory, we've set it up so we have some closed circuit televisions in there, so then people can be outside we have a little chapel just outside the main room at the crematory, so we have more of the family and guests watching the whole ceremony take place, so they can all feel like they're a part of it. And I think that's what makes us different and unique compared to a lot of other funeral homes. A lot of other funeral homes don't have their own crematory, and then they have to go to a third party crematory, and some of those places are very limited on what they can do to help those families celebrate that part of their culture. And we totally embrace it, and we allow families to come into the crematory and participate in that end of the ritual, which I think has really put our funeral home on the map in regards to a complete funeral service for cremation for families that really embrace that type of ceremony. And it's just been a wonderful thing. They come up to us at the end, and they can't thank us enough for allowing them to participate and be involved and just be right there for their closure, which is a different type of closure than our traditional families being at a cemetery, watching a casket being buried into the ground. It's the same type of closure, and they just come up to us, and they're just so grateful that we give them that opportunity. And it makes me and my staff feel good that we can accommodate families like that.
I love that. That is really neat
Yeah.
because you're right. I think that sometimes, especially, and I hate to say this, kids these days, there seems to be a trend, and you're, reading about, culture in America, that a lot of
Yeah.
kids are thinking, oh, I don't have to go to a funeral. I don't need that. Like, and I think that I know I was raised as a child, like you go when you're, know and love someone, if they pass away, you go because you're celebrating the life and the
Yeah.
family. Like it's part of,
Yeah.
so weddings and funerals, beginnings and ends, like you go to
That's
those
right.
things, and you support the ones that are left because you are honoring the life of the
Yeah.
person. And you mentioned a little bit about closure. Um, like share again. You've shared this before, but share again, like why closure is so important and why people like really need that.
Sure. You know, so many people don't want to do funerals, unfortunately. They don't have the time for funerals. And they're like, and most of the time they'll say, "Oh, my mom and dad just cremate me, just bury me. Don't have a big to gathering, and don't have a big to do. I'm gone. It's not about me." And it is about them. It is about your mom or dad or your family member. And it's important to get family and friends in the community together to remember, because that's part of the grief. And its closure is so important. And so many people in our society today don't want to come forward and have closure. And by bringing people together, that helps you get through your grief. And we all have to go through it at some point in our life. And bringing the people together and showing them the culture that you have, that some of the religious things that you have, it's important. It brings our world together when we can share those types of things and appreciate those things. And when you could be there, maybe you have no clue of how that religion works or that culture works, but you're a friend of the families. Show up in respect, understand what they have, and I think it'll bring this world together in peace and harmony by understanding everybody and appreciating. You may not be that religion, but it's not to say you can't respect and understand and be there for them. And they will also appreciate that from you by being there for them at their time that they've lost their loved one. And it's just an important thing. And by you being present, not even having to say a word, but just being there for them will mean a lot. And that will help them with their closure by the support you're giving them.
I love that. Very well described. I love that. And it's so true. And it's not as scary as you think. Like when you sometimes think, oh,
No.
I don't want to go because I don't want to deal with it, whatever. It's not. It's just like having a family party because, and it's just
Yeah.
that you're celebrating the end of a life versus like a birthday, you know.
That's
And I think
right. That's
also
right.
something that we don't talk about very much is like after the fact, like I still remember the people who came to my mother's funeral. I still remember. And then a
Hmm.
few friends actually came to the burial. She was buried at the National Cemetery. And it meant so, bless you, it meant so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, on that note, you have a friend asking what you're drinking this early.
What am I drinking? Hot tea this morning.
Hot tea. Got a little sore throat.
I'm
So this
drinking
show
hot
is going
tea.
to be
My
a little,
throat's a little. Excuse
bless
me.
you. So this show is
Thank
going to
you.
be a little shorter today because Chris is struggling with his throat. But thank you
I
for
am.
asking, Chris. He's got water and he's got tea.
Yes. Thank you.
Also, good morning, Keisha. And Kathy is also joining us.
Good
Thank you
morning.
guys so much. Good morning. So, the last topic that we have today is we're going through the three C's today: customs, cultures, and countries.
Yes.
So, I know that you obviously are here in California in the United States, but sometimes
Yes.
people from other countries have different customs. But also, you had
Yes.
were telling me about, and so maybe you can explain this. If someone passes away in a different country, what you guys do, like how do you make it easy for families to get their loved one back here, and vice versa? If someone is
Sure.
passed away here, how you help get them to other countries. So I think that would be really cool to talk about kind of those three subjects regarding countries.
Sure. Sure. So when someone passes away, if someone here is visiting our country, and we deal literally on a monthly basis, we're shipping people back to Mexico or we're shipping them back to the Philippines. We have a high population of families that have their family living here, or they could have been visiting on vacation and they've passed away here in the Southern California area. So what we need to do is when the family comes in, we'll assist them in getting their loved one back to their hometown of the country that they lived in. And so the process does take a while. Some people don't understand that it could take 10 to 14 working days, sometimes a little longer, because we need to get all the documentation done here locally, get it all approved from our local agencies, the county and the state. Then when it comes to Mexico, we have to translate all those documents into Spanish. Once we translate all those documents to Spanish, so we have them in English and Spanish form, then we have to have them all notarized. Once we get them all notarized, then we have to take them to the consulate. And the consulate has to accept that. And we have to have the person's passport, all of our legal documents for the after death. There's documents for embalming, there's documents for contagious disease, and we have to get all those documents in order. Once we present those to the consulate of that country, and we have them all here in between Los Angeles and Riverside County, we have consulates for every country. We take them there. We have to present them those documents, and then they have to review them. And so sometimes we have to leave them there and we have to go back the next day. Sometimes my staff might have to sit there 3 or 4 hours while they're waiting to get those things done. Once we get all those documents approved, then we can book a flight. And then what we'll do is we also then need to be in contact with a funeral home on the other end. So then we have to call internationally and talk to a funeral home either in Mexico or the Philippines or the Middle East or wherever we're going to let them know and give them all the flight information. And then we'll send them via email or fax. We will send them all of those documents so they have a copy of it on that end. Then we have to make all the documents in triplicate because we have to keep a copy. There has to be a copy for the airlines and a copy to be given to them originally once they arrive there at that end of the country. So there's quite of a process through that. And so we let the families know up front. Sometimes they'll want to have services and ceremonies here, which they can do. within that week or two while we're getting all this done. And then once we get all the flight information documentation ready, then we can go ahead and proceed and get the body prepared, which we would normally prepare if they were having a service here. But then every state or country has also their own shipping restrictions and guidelines. So it might have to be a certain type of a casket, a certain size casket. And so we have to make sure that they'll accept what we have here in the United States, because we have certain regulations, but then other countries have regulations, and we have to abide by their regulations because the body is being shipped into their country. So we have to do certain things to make sure that they will receive and accept that person on that end. And so there's a lot of rules and stuff. And we have a little special booklet. We call it the Red Book that we have that we can go through. We also have to sometimes talk to the consulate of that country and see if they have any special requirements from us. But once everything is put together and in order, it usually goes quite smoothly. We've never had an issue where, a body gets to the wrong country or to the wrong place. It always works out well because there's that communication between us and the funeral home and the family, because there's typically has to be some family on the other end too to accept that also. So it's something that you can say we specialize in because we do it quite often. So a lot of families entrust us in getting their loved one shipped across the country or around the world, which is come somewhat intriguing and kind of a cool thing, because you're working with those other countries and cultures to find out exactly what we need to do to make sure we get their loved ones safely for them to be buried or cremated back in their own home country.
That's so fascinating. But bottom line,
Yeah.
you handle all those details. The family who is in grief mode and is overwhelmed,
Yes.
they don't have to do a thing. They just call
Nope.
you and you do everything. You're full concierge for them.
We're full service. We are full service. So we will have to sit and talk to the family about getting some information,
Sure,
and some
sure.
of their documents, their passport or visas and stuff. But we make all the phone calls. We do all the coordination. We do all the running around. And there is a little bit of an extra fee for that because it's a
Sure.
lot more time consuming and takes time to do all that.
Of
But
course.
we take care of all that for the family. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And then you were
Yeah.
mentioning just like burying someone in a coffin, but you can also do the same thing for if they want to be cremated here and just the urn sent, I'm assuming.
That is correct. We can do the same thing with the urn. And if we do just the urn, then we have to do the same type of letters for burial. And then we have to do them for the crematory too, saying it's only the ashes that are in the urn. So
Right.
then and we're not putting paraphernalia inside the urn that we're shipping because it all has
That
to be
happens?
sealed. Well, I don't know. I mean, we put
You
ashes
don't.
in, and yeah,
That
but it
sounds like
can
a
happen.
that sounds like a movie on Netflix or something.
Well, there's movies all the time that do those crazy things, but
Yeah.
no, we have to put it. And sometimes it can't be a metal urn; might have to be a wooden urn or a plastic urn, so we have to find out what that country will accept because sometimes we can't ship. We're restricted on the type of things we can ship.
Okay, interesting. Well,
Yeah,
that's great. So you work with all the different things. In fact, Kathy chimed in about closure, and you're right. Celebrating life is so important, and it makes you feel good. It makes the people who've known your friends feel good, your loved ones. So, yes, we actually have a lot
yes.
of comments coming in that aren't coming up on the screen. So, just wanting you to know that Sherilyn McKinney said this is important and relevant information that we're disseminating. So, I'm so glad this is resonating with you, Sherilyn.
Great.
And
Thanks.
Kathy also said the airlines may also cause a delay due to their schedule. So
Yes.
that's something that you guys would coordinate as well.
That is correct because every airlines, typically there's typically a human remains on almost every airline flight. But they
Really?
can only allow one up to maybe two caskets down below where the cargo is because they need to keep the plane balanced. So it's one of those things where there's weight restrictions and size restrictions based upon the flight. And that's why sometimes we can't get a certain flight because they're already booked with other people, or there's too much cargo going on there because they can only put a certain amount of weight in cargo on every flight.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah.
wild. I had no
Yeah.
idea. So
Yep.
pretty much every flight you have to deal with that?
Every flight going out there, there's I would say 80% of the flights are going to have a human remains on there. You don't even know about it because
Wow.
they always put them on early before you go out. When you're out looking outside, you're always just looking at the light. Those things are already done, and you won't even see it.
Wow.
It's just done under the rug, like.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully that won't freak anybody out because it's on every flight and that's just fact of life.
it's all
It's just
part of it.
happens.
It's all part of it.
Death and taxes, right?
That's right.
It's going to happen to everybody. So,
That's right.
well, thank you, Chris, for this information. This was very fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah, Haley just said, "The more you know." How crazy, right?
that's right. Every day you get to learn a
And
little
it's
bit
all
more.
yeah, and it's okay. It's all okay. Yes. Oh,
That's right.
Carolyn even said, "Wow!" Right. When her comment came through. Yeah, it's just fascinating, and I think that again, this is information for cocktail parties as well, Chris. So thank you.
You bet.
Something interesting to talk about, right?
I've had a lot of friends lately talking to me personally saying, yeah, people have seen your show and they've started talking about more interesting subjects when they're around just having a good time. I'm like, well, that's good. It's
Yeah.
better to talk about this stuff now and know where you're at and get the answers. And I've had some friends call me up and say, Chris, is this really true? Somebody was telling me that. I'm like, no, that's not true.
Oh, let's talk about that. And we'll end the show with this. So you had
Okay.
said that so at some party, someone was sharing a story that they heard, which is complete false. And so would you address that? So someone attended a funeral and saw the
So
coffin half shut, which you usually cover the legs. What was
yeah,
the
typically.
comment?
Well, the person had asked if we cut the person in half to put them in the crematory to fit them in the retort. And I said, absolutely not. I go, why would we go through that effort of cutting somebody up to put them in the retort? They're going in as a whole person and they're going to be cremated into ashes. So I said, no,
Okay.
we don't do stuff like that. But we do, if a person does have a pacemaker, we have to make an incision and remove that pacemaker because that pacemaker could explode and put a hole and damage my machine. So there
Right.
are incisions made to remove those types of things, but there's no need to dissect a person or do an autopsy or break them down to do
No.
a cremation. That's not necessary.
No, no.
No,
And
no.
also in the casket, you out of respect, you cover their legs, and so it's just the top of their
That's
body that
correct.
shows.
There there are some cultures that like to see the whole body, and so we'll open up the whole thing so they can see everything from head to toe. But typically through time now, typically we're only going to see people from the waist up. We're only going to see the upper part because there's no need to really have to see the waist or the legs of a person. So it's
No.
just always been very private down there, because below the belt is very private. So we just keep
Exactly.
that out of view. Yeah.
But again, we've said I think we said in another show, you do put shoes and pants or
We put
skirts or whatever
underwear and
in.
undershirts and shoes and socks. And if we put on, if anything, if people want a pair of boots, cowboy boots, we'll get the boots on there. It's not easy to get boots on somebody, but we'll get
Right?
their boots on if that's what if their wishes are.
Buried with your boots on. I've heard that in a song.
That's right.
That's
That's right.
Well, Chris, this has just been a fascinating show. Thank you so much. And also, I want to put it out
You
there
bet.
if you're watching this on replay and you have questions, please put them in the comments because we'll circle back. Also, if you have any ideas for future shows, like questions you'd want Chris to answer, I know looking behind you, you've got those cute bunny on
Yeah,
display. Easter is coming up this Sunday, so we
it
want to
is.
wish everyone a blessed Easter. It's a time for we celebrate the resurrection and today is Good Friday, which is the day we
It is.
celebrate the death of Jesus,
Yes.
right? And so, how
They
appropriate that we're having dialogues about death on
Good
today, on
Friday.
Good Friday. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so thank you, Chris. I appreciate. Hope you feel
Thank
better,
you.
and we'll see
Thank you
you
very
guys
much.
on. I'm so sorry.
Nope, I'm good. I'm just clearing my throat.
Oh. Oh goodness, we need to take some rest. All right. So thanks
Sure.
again, everyone, for showing up live. Thank you for the watching and the replay, and we'll look forward to talking with you again in the next Dialogues About Death with Chris Miller. All right.
Great.
Until
Have,
then.
have a great Easter, everybody. Take
Okay.
care.
All right. God bless.
Bye bye.